In the NFL offseason, there is never a shortage of potential trade rumors and potential ideas on what could potentially happen to a certain player. Well, for the Detroit Lions, there's a lot of these potential rumors that are surrounding their backup quarterback. We're going to talk about it in this episode, folks, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lion.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, old Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, here's the thing, folks. As we all know, we're right now kind of in what I would like to call the summer lull, the summer recess before we get into training camp. All the teams in the NFL, they're kind of in their summer break. They're taking a chance to kind of, step back away from football operations of the offseason. The players are still, exercising. They're still doing their summer, routines to get ready for training camp. That's great for the players. That's great for the organizations. However, though, that means there's not really a whole lot of news that's going on right now in the NFL world because, well, there's really not a whole lot going on in the NFL world. So this now gives me an opportunity to start talking about things that I might not honestly have gotten a chance to talk about in other episodes, but now I can talk about it. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a potential situation, a potential, kind of storm that is kind of brewing around what is going to be Hendon Hooker's future with the Detroit Lions. Now, understand exactly what I'm saying by that. I'm not saying that the Lions are going to do anything with Hendon Hooker. I'm not pushing for them to do anything with Hendon Hooker. I'm not advocating that they do anything with Hendon Hooker. The reason why I'm stating that so clearly, so aggressively, so strongly with this episode is because in the past, I was honestly probably one of the biggest proponents that said, listen, I get what Hendon Hooker is for a lot of people, but Hendon Hooker is not the future of the Detroit Lions. I don't care what people wanted to say, and I honestly continue to back that up. I said it as many times as I possibly could that, listen, Jared Goff's the future. Jared Goff is the present. Jared Goff is going to be the franchise quarterback, and I was right when the Lions gave him that 4-year, $212 million extension. I knew that was where the Lions were going to go, regardless of what a lot of people wanted to argue with me about. Regardless of what a lot of people in the comments wanted to tell me. It's like, listen, I respect your opinion. I understand what you think. But I'm telling you, that's not where the Lions are going. And honestly, at this point, I'm not going to argue that anymore because I have 212 million reasons as to why I was right. But that does not necessarily mean that the whole situation around Hendon Hooker is resolved. Now, I'm going to, again, very quite plainly state this. I have nothing against Hendon Hooker. I think Hendon Hooker is a swell guy. I think the guy has a great head on his shoulders. And I think the dude is a guy that you could sit down, you could have a pleasant conversation with. He looks like a very, very friendly dude. But that doesn't necessarily change what we're talking about when it comes to the business aspect of what the Detroit Lions have right now. Because that's where we're going with this episode. There's a lot of talk right now in the social media world of the Detroit Lions about, okay, we obviously know that Goff is the franchise quarterback. He is the guy that's not going to change. But what the thunder happens in regards to Hendon Hooker's future? That's where this episode is going to take us because there's I'm going to just say it. There's realistically two things that the Lions can do with Hendon Hooker. They can either hold on to him, they can develop him, or they can decide to move off of him and go in a completely different direction. That's realistically the only two things that they can do. But ultimately, it's weighing up the options. It's trying to figure out which way to go is the better option for the Detroit Lions. And realistically, when I say that, it's what Lions fans think should happen. Because I guarantee you this. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, they've already come to the decision on what they're going to do with Hendon Hooker. At this point, it's just merely us speculating. We're guessing. We're giving our best, hypothesis about what potentially could happen. So let's take a look at this. Let's understand where this could potentially take us. There's reasons why Hendon Hooker should remain here, and there's reason why Hendon Hooker would probably not remain here. And ultimately what I think that comes down to is whether or not Hendon Hooker gets traded or not. Because I don't realistically see the Lions cutting him. So let's take a look at the reasons why the Lions trading Hendon Hooker would make sense. Here's point number one. when we honestly think about it, Hendon Hooker is a very green, very, inexperienced quarterback in the NFL. He's inexperienced both in overall time as far as, being in the NFL, as far as being an overall player, but he's also inexperienced in being a backup quarterback. You have to understand something here. Hendon Hooker has not been a backup quarterback since his early days in college. He's used to being a starter at this point. So, and the reason why I'm talking about it in that perspective is that, listen, when you move from college to NFL first and foremost, that's already a massive change of pace. That's a massive change of how you're going to do things first and foremost. But then when you have to change what your role is, rather than being the starter to the backup, that's also going to be something you have to adapt to. That's also something you have to start getting used to. That lack of experience is going to be something that maybe the Lions don't want to potentially deal with. Now, I'm not saying that is, but I'm just simply saying this is a potential reason as to why making a trade, happen with Hendon Hooker might make sense. The second thing that I can talk about as to why trading Hendon Hooker at this point could make sense. I know people are not going to want to hear this. I know people are going to want to wish that it didn't happen, but let's be fair and honest with ourselves. I read, the freaking practice reports just as much as anybody else. There were constant times I kept reading about how Hendon Hooker was airmailing balls. He was struggling with timing, struggling with anticipation. His accuracy was all over the place. This is something that, honestly, you expect to hear with young quarterbacks. But at the same time, taking a look at the fact that Hendon Hooker is 26 years old, he was in college for a much longer period than most other quarterbacks that are coming into the NFL. The fact that he is having so many problems, that right there is a little bit concerning. Now, again, I expected that this was going to happen to a certain degree because, again, he didn't practice at all last year, really, for the most part, until the very end of the year. He really didn't get a whole lot of reps. And again, he's still a young player in terms of experience in the NFL. So it's like, yeah, I expect that Hendon Hooker is going to struggle understanding the nuances and the complexities of the offense that the Lions run, because it's based upon timing. It's based upon anticipation. It's a completely different style of offense than what he ran when he was at Tennessee. At Tennessee, Hendon Hooker didn't have to do anything with timing. It was just like, all right, I'm going to stand back there and I'm just going to wait for the guy to get open and then I'm going to throw it to him. That's not the way it works here in Detroit. You have to have timing. You have to have anticipation. That takes practice. So again, not at all surprising that Hendon Hooker is struggling in that regard. But that might be a reason why the Lions might decide to trade Hendon Hooker. Reason number 3. Let's put this in perspective from another team's eye. Let's think about this. Hendon Hooker, yes, he is 26 years old, but he's still young enough in regards to his NFL career, and it's early enough into his career that maybe a team might want to take a shot on him because he's still schematically pliable enough to learn an offense somewhere else. Again, he's only been in the NFL, folks, for 1 year. He's going into his very first full offseason being able to practice. He could go somewhere else. The Lions could see that he could go somewhere else, and they could trade him somewhere else where a team could be like, hey, we like what we see in this kid. We can just schematically, mold him to what we're doing because he really hasn't learned anything yet. That's why I'm saying schematically pliable. So again, looking at it from another team's perspective, there's value there to kind of take a player that has physical talent and move him or mold him into what you're looking for on their offense. The fourth reason why I think making Hooker could make sense for the Detroit Lions is, let's think about this in the most doomsday scenario you could possibly think of for the Detroit Lions. Let's just say in the unlikely case, Goff gets injured. Again, knock on wood, we're not hoping for that. I'm just simply playing devil's advocate here, extreme devil's advocate. Let's just say that happens. A veteran quarterback would more likely be ideal to hold down the fort while Goff would recover rather than Hendon Hooker. Again, Hendon Hooker has no experience playing in the NFL. He's never taken an NFL snap. He's never started an NFL game. He's never had to face an NFL defense on an NFL field before. So if you're realistically trying to make a push for a Super Bowl, are you realistically going to try and tell me that you want Hendon Hooker being this quarterback that takes up, the reins while Goff recovers? Or would you rather want a veteran quarterback that at least has a little bit more savvy, a little bit more understanding of the situation? In most cases, in most scenarios, the team would want the vet rather than the rookie. I'm just simply saying. So that's another reason why potentially trading Hooker could potentially make sense for the Lions. Then you have another reason that kind of plays into that whole thing. let's just say the Lions were to trade Hendon Hooker, and I already know some Lions fans are not going to want to hear this. I don't even want to say it, but let's just call it for what it is. The Lions still have Nate Sudfeld on the roster. They still have Nate Sudfeld in camp. And I'm going to say this right now. Do I believe Nate Sudfeld is better than Hendon Hooker? Hell freaking no. I know that one for a fact. But let's just call it for what it is. The Lions brought back Nate Sudfeld for a reason. They wouldn't just bring him back just for the hell of it. They obviously like something about him. They obviously think he's got something to offer. So even if the Lions were to trade away Hendon Hooker, they'd have Nate Sudfeld in camp, so then that way they would have time to find somebody else to bring in, learn the offense, and then become the backup quarterback. That is, again, what I think Nate Sudfeld is there for. He's kind of like a buffering option. He's kind of like your last-ditch emergency option in case all things go to hell in a handbasket. And then there's the final reason I can think of why trading Hendon Hooker makes sense. Because you're going to get a return on investment in a draft pick later. Let me explain. With Jared Goff under contract now for the next 5 years, because he's still got 1 year left on the Rams contract that he signed, plus he just got that 4-year contract extension. So Goff's under contract now for 5 years. For those next 5 years, you don't really need an heir apparent for Jared Goff. You're not going to really need an heir apparent until about maybe 3 or 4 years down the road. So you don't need one anytime soon. You could, in theory, decide to trade Hendon Hooker to get a draft pick that you could use next year, so that way you could immediately use that draft pick to get help or a talent somewhere else immediately to help the team out. Rather than just holding on to Hendon Hooker. And again, by the time Hendon Hooker could actually, quote unquote, play for the Lions, he'd almost be 30 himself. Again, that just simply doesn't make any sense if you're talking about a guy taking over for Jared Goff. So again, that's a reason why I think trading for Hendon Hooker would make sense. It's like, listen, we could get a draft pick for next year's draft. We could use that draft pick, bring in somebody that could help us immediately somewhere else, and then Hendon Hooker can go and play wherever he wants. I'm just simply saying, that's a potential reason, that's a potential scenario as to why trading Hendon Hooker could make sense here for the Detroit Lions. However, though, there's the flip side to that coin. Then there's the reasons why trading Hendon Hooker does not make any sense. And this is personally where I find myself in. This is the camp I am in. I don't think trading Hendon Hooker makes any damn sense. And here's the reasons why. The first reason why. Hendon Hooker has upside, despite his advanced age for a quarterback with very little experience. Again, let's understand something about Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker has a very strong arm. Hendon Hooker has good athleticism. He also has excellent football character. He is a good football player for being a team player. We know one thing about the Detroit Lions. Yes, they want talented players to be their starters, but they want players that are of excellent football character. They want guys that love the game. They want guys that are going to work. They're not going to make a fuss. They're not going to be prima donnas. That is everything that Hendon Hooker is. He's not a prima donna. He's not all about himself. He's a team player, and there's upside in that for Hendon Hooker here in Detroit. So again, there's no reason to trade Hendon Hooker away. He's clearly obviously fine in the role that he has right now as a backup quarterback. There's no reason to quote-unquote rock the boat just because, hey, you know what? We might be able to get something out of him. Hendon Hooker's doing fine with what he's doing right now. There's no reason to rock the boat. Leave it be. Reason number two. I'm just going to, again, take a look at this from the perspective of the Lions, potentially, looking at it from an outside viewpoint. The Lions, they still themselves have not figured out what Hendon Hooker is yet, whether what he is right now or what he's going to be in the future. So think about it. If they don't even know what he is right now for them or what he's going to be in the future for them, other than the fact that, hey, you know what? He's going to be the backup right now, and we're developing him to be at least a backup. He could be something later. What sense does it make to realistically trade him? It makes zero sense, because if the Lions don't know what kind of a player he's going to be in the future, then why would you trade him? We already know the Lions look at Hendon Hooker as a solid, steady backup option for their team. That's the way they look at him right now. Let's just say that that's about as far as they take it, and they decide to trade him somewhere else. At that point, then, they've taken everything completely out of their hands, and they've put it somewhere else. That's a very dangerous proposition if you're talking about it from the team's perspective of, we have no idea what Hendon Hooker could be somewhere else. Let's wait and see until we fully know what we're dealing with here before we just decide to, bolt him off somewhere else. So that's reason number two. Reason number three, again, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Sudfeld as far as a reason to trading Hendon Hooker. But you can also use this as a reason not to trade Hendon Hooker. Trading Hendon Hooker would mean the Lions would have to find another quarterback to compete for the backup job. Because I'm telling you this right now, even though you've got Sudfeld in camp, they are sure as hell not going to entrust it to Nate Sudfeld. We did that last year, and what did Brad Holmes say? He said, listen, we are going to improve the competition. We are going to improve the backup quarterback position. So it's like, listen, they like Nate Sudfeld for what he is, but obviously not enough to entrust him as the number 2 guy. So it's like, okay, if you were to trade Hendon Hooker away, you'd have to find somebody else. Well, let's keep this in perspective for where we are right now at this point in the offseason. We are very, very late into the offseason. That would be very unwise for the Lions to all of a sudden make such a bold move like that, because it would mean they would have to bring in somebody that would have to pick up the offense in a super damn quick hurry, and they'd have to hope and pray that if they were called upon, they would know what they're doing. We obviously saw the Lions do that last year with Teddy Bridgewater. But I don't know if the Lions want to try and do that rodeo again. I'm just simply saying, this Lions offense, the one that Goff and Johnson runs, it's very complex. It's not something that is done for the faint of heart. I'm just simply saying, I don't know if the Lions want to go through that whole diamond dance all over again. So that's the third reason as to why I don't think the Lions should trade, Hendon Hooker, why it wouldn't make any sense. Here's the fourth reason why I don't think it would make any sense. I'm just going to call it quite bluntly here. If the Lions were to trade Hendon Hooker, it would make Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell look like absolute liars and hypocrites. Think about it. Both of those men have long stated that they want a solid, stable depth in the quarterback room. They want solid, stable depth there. And a move like this that is possibly being talked about, again, this late in the offseason, it's the exact opposite of that. You're not having a solid backup option. You're not having any stability in the backup quarterback room because you're constantly making moves. It would be the exact opposite of what those guys have long stated that they wanted with the quarterback room. And I guess if you want to realistically look at it from the whole roster perspective, the entire roster. They have stated multiple times that they want solid depth. You start making moves like this, you're not going to have anything solid because you're not allowing it to get settled. So that's another reason why I don't think trading Hendon Hooker makes any sense. And then there's another reason. I'm just going to say this. What is one thing we know about Brad Holmes? Brad Holmes is usually what I'd like to call a creature of habit. He goes with things that work. Well, if Brad Holmes were to trade one of his draft picks away, it would set a new and a very unnerving precedent for the Detroit Lions. Because think about it. Holmes has never traded away one of his draft picks with the Detroit Lions. In fact, Holmes has every single draft pick that he has ever made with the Detroit Lions still on the roster, except for Chase Lucas. Chase Lucas is the only guy that Brad Holmes has drafted that is not still with the Detroit Lions. He's now playing with the San Francisco 49ers. But Holmes didn't trade him. He just didn't make the roster because, well, he wasn't good enough. But if you all of a sudden were to trade a quarterback like Hendon Hooker, who was a third-round draft pick, mind you, so he wasn't just a chump change pick. He was actually a decently high pick. That's going to set a very new, very unnerving precedent for the entire organization because it's like, man, if Hendon Hooker can get traded and he's only been with the team for 1 year, that pretty much tells everybody else this. Anybody can be traded. And again, that would pretty much tell the rest of the NFL that Brad Holmes' drafting prospects, his drafting strategy, it definitely is going to take a whole new flavor. Up until this point, until something like that happens, everybody looks at Brad Holmes and they're like, yes, Brad Holmes' draft picks are going to stay in Detroit because he loves his draft picks. They love their players. You make a move like that, then all of a sudden it completely changes the entire outlook. So again, I do not think that'd be a wise idea. I think that's a reason why the Lions should not trade Hendon Hooker. And then there's the final reason. I'm going to say this right now. The Lions, they have a lot of cap space. They have a lot of money on their books right now that they can potentially use. But let's understand this. Hendon Hooker is already under his rookie contract. His rookie contract is very, very manageable. It's not at all expensive. But if you were to trade Hendon Hooker, there would obviously be some sort of a dead cap hit. Not a big one, but there would be some dead cap hit. But then, like I said, you would have to go out and you have to find another quarterback. Well, here's the thing. There's realistically only 4 quarterbacks that are on the open market that realistically make any sense trying to sign. And I actually wrote their names down here. It'd be Ryan Tannehill, Brian Hoyer, Blaine Gabbert, A.J. McCarron. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I have no interest or desire in going out and getting Brian Hoyer. I have no interest or desire in going out and getting Blaine Gabbert. Those guys, no good. Not at all. AJ McCarron, I would actually be interested in potentially, considering, because he went to, I think it was the UFL. He did very good there. So there's obviously talent there, and we've seen him in the past when he played with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was able to come in, play very good in relief. So AJ McCarron is actually a guy that I could realistically get on board with, potentially being brought in as a veteran backup idea. But Ryan Tannehill? Ryan Tannehill is an okay quarterback, but he just came off a $30 million a year contract. I guarantee you this, Ryan Tannehill and his representatives, you want to know what they're doing? They're playing the waiting game. And they're playing the waiting game because they want to see potentially how camp is going to shake out, if somebody's going to get injured, and then all of a sudden a team's going to start coming around knocking on Tannehill's door saying, hey, we need you to come in and play starting quarterback for us. Tannehill's in no mood. He's in no rush to try and find a job. He's waiting for the job that allows him to be a starter, not to be a backup. That's why when I keep hearing people say, oh, well, the Lions should go out and get Tannehill. Tannehill doesn't want to come to the Lions. He wants to go to a team that's going to give him the chance to start. There's no chance of him starting here in Detroit. Absolutely none. So I don't think that would make any sense. But again, even if you were to go out and get an A.J. McCarron, it would still cost more money up front as far as an immediate contract incentive, as far as immediate money walking out the door versus what you already have in Hendon Hooker's contract, because his contract is spread out over the next, 2 or 3 years? So again, the money just doesn't make any sense from that perspective either. So that's why I decided to make this episode. There's reasons why the Lions could decide to trade Hendon Hooker. There are actual reasons. But overall, I think the reasons that go against trading for Hendon Hooker, those make a lot more sense because, again, like I said, it just doesn't make any sense from the perspective of who Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are first and foremost. But looking at where we are in the offseason, how the Lions are right now, and all the different things they would have to do to try and make something like this work, it's just more trouble than what it's worth. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to make this episode because I've seen a lot of articles talking about this, and I was like, you know what? I need to make an episode, and I need to go over everything I can possibly think of for this. But having said that, I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching at another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, highly encourage y'all to hit that bell notification icon as well, so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows, the greater the channel spreads. And with that being said, to everybody, I hope y'all are doing well. Hope y'all enjoyed the content. Hope y'all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.